Stage 13, Contemplating Impermanence. The guideline for practicing the 13th stage is this. Contemplating impermanence, I shall breathe out, thus he trains himself. Contemplating impermanence, I shall breathe in, thus he trains himself. While the meditator is contemplating or seeing impermanence, there is no chance for him to have any evil intention satana, that is. He cannot break any moral precepts, thus he trains himself in the training of higher morality. While contemplating in this way, his mind is one-pointed and focused, he is endowed with the right level of concentration so it can be balanced with wisdom. Thus he trains himself simultaneously in the training of higher concentration. Seeing impermanence is in itself fully established in the three aspects of the training while contemplating impermanence. Regarding the expression contemplating impermanence, these points have to be considered. What is impermanent? In what sense does impermanence manifest itself? How to contemplate impermanence? Who contemplates impermanence? All conditioned things are impermanent. The nature of impermanence is manifested by applying mindfulness, sati. The person who watches closely the nature of impermanence all the time with each breathing in and breathing out is called one who contemplates impermanence. 1. As an answer to the question, what is impermanent? The statement all conditioned things are impermanent is too brief and vague. It does not help one to understand clearly the distinct practice for contemplating what is impermanent. There must be a more comprehensive answer to the question. Therefore, as a rule, among meditation practitioners, the answer to this question is commonly given like this. The 5 aggregates, all 6 internal sense bases, and the 12 links of dependent origination are impermanent. All these dhammas are to be considered individually. The first group, the 5 aggregates, referring to materiality, feeling, perception, mental formations,
and consciousness, has a wide connotation encompassing everything in the world, and can be summarized as materiality and mentality. All these things here have the position or status of objects, rama, that is, things which are seen, heard, done, etc. No matter in how many ways they are divided, they are all comprised in the expression the 5 aggregates, or mentality and materiality. They form in general the object, rama, of insight, vipassana. The group of 6 sense bases refers to eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, including the corresponding consciousness, vinna, arisen through each of these 6 sense bases, together with other things which function jointly. All these things have the status of subjects, each performing the corresponding function of seeing, hearing, etc. The 5 aggregates as objects and the bases as subjects are to be contemplated so that all things in their entirety are included, and the meditator, having seen that both the subjective and the objective worlds are impermanent, does not cling to them. As a result, the meditator realizes that form, the object, and the I, the subject, are both impermanent. The same applies to the other sense bases and their corresponding objects. The next group, the 12 links of dependent origination, signifies the mode or manner of all kinds of conditioned arisings at the moment of seeing a form, hearing a sound, etc. At that time the meditator notes how many different conditioned arisings there are in succession and what modes of conditions are involved in that process of arising. He contemplates each of the modes as impermanent, that is, he observes closely that ignorance, the first link, conditions kama formations. Kama formations condition consciousness, consciousness conditions mentality plus materiality. Mentality plus materiality conditions the 6 sense bases, these conditions sense impression, this conditions feeling, feeling conditions craving.
Craving clinging, clinging conditions process of becoming, this conditions birth and birth finally conditions old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair. I end this way he sees the conditioned arising of different phenomena, Dhamma. And then he contemplates the conditioned cessation which follows just the opposite pattern of arising. The cessation of ignorance makes kama formations cease, the cessation of kama formations makes consciousness cease, and so forth until, with the cessation of birth, old age, death, etc. cease. As with conditioned arising so with conditioned cessation he contemplates each of the 12 modes of cessation and notes it as impermanent. Thus the meditator sees not only that the 6 external bases, Bahirani Ayotanani, such as form, etc. And their corresponding internal sense spaces such as I, etc. are impermanent. But also that the phenomena which arise because of their relation are impermanent as well. In this way he contemplates exhaustively the impermanence of everything whatsoever. To conclude the whole topic by way of illustrating again briefly, in the act of seeing a visual form there arise different mental states. To analyze, there is an object or external base, which is the form seen, there is contact with the object of form, the internal base, the I. There are different modes or manners in which the first two things are related, that is, for instance, the manner in which the I has contacted the form, the manner in which there arises I consciousness, kakuvina, kama, and the manner in which there happens the coming together of the three, I, form and I consciousness, known as sense or sensorial, impression through I, kakusamphasa, the pattern in which that sense impression gives rise to feeling, kakusamphasaja vedana, which in turn conditions perception, volition, sana, satana vitaka, vikara, etc. and finally one experiences unsatisfactoriness due to their impermanence.
Briefly, he knows that the subjective world inside, the objective world outside, and the world resulting from their interrelationship or interaction are all impermanent. It is only through contemplating impermanence in this way that one can pierce through the characteristics of unsatisfactoriness and no self or voidness, sanatta, so that one becomes wearied and finally renounces everything without any clinging. To sum up the answer to the question what is impermanence: 1. There are things which are contacted. 2. There are things which perform the function of contact. 3. There are various different modes and manners or patterns in relation to contact. These three categories comprise all that is impermanent, otherwise called conditioned things, sakra. It does not matter in how many ways each of the categories is divided, all must be actually seen as impermanent in the way described above. 2. How impermanence manifests itself and how to contemplate impermanence. The characteristic or nature of impermanence is manifested essentially in the sense of arising, decaying, and ceasing, as is clear from the Pali scriptures. All conditioned things are impermanent. They are of the nature of arising and decaying. Having arisen, they cease to be. This shows that nothing is in the same state all the time. There is continuous change. This continuous change means there must be arising and ceasing. If there is no cessation, there can be no change, no new arising. Therefore, change implies arising, then ceasing, then arising anew in other forms, endlessly. The term impermanence not only shows the process of arising and ceasing, but also shows that each new arising is not the same as the preceding arising. 3. How to contemplate impermanence. There are various stages in which to contemplate it, from shallow to successively deeper and deeper.
The very first stage, that is, the earliest way which an ordinary person would understand, is to consider the impermanence of conditioned things, sakra, in groups. For example, consider the 5 aggregates which taken together are conventionally called a person. A person is born as a child and then gradually grows up, grows old, and finally dies. Or to analyze, the lifespan is divided into 3 periods: youth, middle age, and old age, and each period is full of very many changes. However, contemplating or considering this way is still coarse. Things change not only every day, every hour, or minute, or even second. They are actually changing every single moment, sataka. This moment cannot possibly be measured by the ordinary means of measuring time. According to the language of Abhidhamma, a moment is so short that it cannot be precisely measured. A sataka, lit. Thought moment, is incomparably faster than anything in the world, for instance lightning, etc. This means that all things, whether material or immaterial or mental, are invisibly and continuously changing every thought moment. Each atom of a material or physical body is changing at tremendous speed, not to mention mental things, which are changing at a still greater speed. All this amounts to contemplation from the standpoint of time. That is, we take time as the measure, to grasp impermanence. The tiniest thing, indivisible as it may be, is subject to instant changes, yea, the shortest conceivable length of time.
Different things, are known in the world because there is consciousness sensing them. If no consciousness arises, then the different things in the world are in effect non-existent. On this ground, the arising of mind, i.e., arising of feeling or sensing them, means therefore the arising of all objects, or their appearing to be felt or sensed. As soon as mind, citta, ceases, they too cease, being non-existent for the individual concerned. We can therefore say that everything depends on the mind, is in the power of the mind, or has significance only because of consciousness or mind, and is always arising and ceasing with the arising and ceasing of consciousness. Thus, since consciousness is something which is arising and ceasing every moment, it follows that all things, whether material or mental, inside or outside the body, are arising and ceasing every thought moment too. Contemplating like this is subtler than the contemplation described in the preceding stage. Further, at the next stage of contemplation one contemplates in a still deeper way. One sees that different things come into being dependent on many layers of causes and conditions. One will see that one condition for the sustenance of the body is the supply of food consisting of rice, fish, which are always changing. Why is there change in rice, fish, etc.? Because they are conditioned by elements, climate, which are always changing. Further, elements and climate are conditioned by other things which are in themselves impermanent as well, thus this process goes on endlessly.
As the state of flux holds true with regard to material things, it is all the more true of mental processes, because they are quicker. To sum up, different things change, because they are dependent on conditions, which change. And this dependence on conditions goes on in an infinite regress. To see impermanence in this way has a wide meaning, to the extent that one simultaneously penetrates the characteristics of suffering or unsatisfactoriness and no self. Another way to contemplate impermanence is in the sense that each of the conditioned things consists itself of many things, each of which can be further and further analyzed and finally seen as void. It is only because at times different things come into contact with one another in the right proportions that there come into being phenomena appearing to be something substantial, a soul or self, or something satisfactory and desirable. As soon as the mode of their coming into contact with one another changes, the phenomenon concerned disappears. It should be observed that any kind of combination through which different things come in contact and account for the appearance of a phenomenon cannot be permanent. It is bound to be broken up and dissolved all the more easily. In the same way, when a group of men are put to work together, differences in opinion will come up all the more easily in proportion to the number of men in the group. As a natural consequence, the mode of relationship of the men in the group will be all the more bound to change according to the number of men. The purpose of this illustration is to point out that at this stage one contemplates the impermanence of the mode of combination or relationship of different things as against seeing impermanence in the things themselves as in the preceding stages. All that has been said is intended to illustrate the nature or characteristic of impermanence from different angles. We shall now further discuss the method of contemplating impermanence.
Generally speaking, to contemplate impermanence means to contemplate and see the arising, continuation, and ceasing of all things. But now it is not intended to give thought to all things, or different phenomena concerning things, and examine them in the light of cause and effect, concluding that they are impermanent. To do that would merely be dry intellectualization based on rational or logical thinking and having nothing to do with the development of insight meditation. This way of rational thinking results in generalizing or formulating theories as may be required by convention. It does not at all result in gaining clear insight or the kind of penetration which gives rise to weariness nibbida, dispassion viraga, etc. All this one does first in the present, that is, when things are present before the mental eye, and then one must note how they come to be past. In the same way one sees the present in relation to the future by noting that what one is presently contemplating was future just a thought moment before. While one is practicing like this, one penetrates through the fact of impermanence, thereby thoroughly realizing it. To illustrate, in the case of contemplating any of the 5 aggregates, the meditator must first make the aggregate become clearly manifest before the mental eye. For instance, while contemplating the body, the meditator has to watch closely a particular aspect of the body, such as the breathing, in order to gain a clear penetration of the fact that the body is impermanent, etc., so that there actually arises weariness. This way of direct realization is quite different from thinking about the body by analyzing it into innumerable parts.